Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and I just finished part 1 for this this book reading. Let's continue. It's getting good. Lady Marylet, are you alright? Sirius fussed, paling at the fact that he just made his beloved cry. It was only as a result of their reactions that Marylet herself realized she was crying. She gave it a bear slap and started wiping at her wet cheeks. How bizarre, she sniffed. Why would being so happy make me cry? Oh, I knew it was happy tears! A proposal like that made you happy? Raven heaved in disbelief. Did you think I'd be scared? Obviously. I mean, he's gonna destroy the country depending on how you feel. I'd definitely be scared, he exclaimed, flailing his arms. That just shows how much... Are you really okay with him being that possessive girl? I mean, there's a fine line between, that and it being a bad thing. That just shows how much he loves me, don't you think? Plus, I raised Sirius for more than half a year. He's grown to be so kind and caring. He wouldn't actually do it, right, Sirius? She sang. Sirius said nothing. He had a blank look on his face, and Marylet had no idea what he was thinking. Then, after a long, long moment of silence, he finally answered, "Of course not." I think he would. I think he would actually do it. If he got mad enough, he would. When Raven finished... Wait. No. What the fuck? Page 48. Wait. Huh? What the fuck? What the fuck? Is there a page missing? I think a page is missing. When Raven finished eating, he bounced over to the window and threw it wide open, with Marylet's permission, of course. He looked into the vast blue sky and took a deep breath before blowing a loud whistle into the open air. 2 birds suddenly came flying down from the sky, soon joined by a third one. They acted more like pets than familiars. They obediently swooped down to his head and shoulders without making any fuss, then affectionately settled down. What's he doing? Marylet asked Sirius curiously. These crows have a shared consciousness with the ones the Emperor keeps back at the palace. So Raven can report to His Majesty through them, he explained. Oh, that's handy. Plus, the birds were rather cute. While she admired the sweet little faces, she finally broached a subject that had been floating about her mind for a while now. So, she began, would I be right in assuming you two are quite a big deal back in your home country? Did you not realize it by now? When he was telling his story, he had fled the palace. That meant if they were willing to kill his family, they have to be important. He is the prince. I suppose so, Sirius shrugged. But due to that, I was always forced to do a lot of work, even though I was a child. I can't say it's enjoyable. You had to work? Yes, originally it fell to my older brothers, but several of them abandoned their duties, so I had to take over. Oh dear, she said with a small chuckle. However, she noticed a slight inconsistency with her knowledge. But wasn't your entire family killed? Ah, yes, I was referring to the couple who raised me rather than my blood relatives. I believe my brothers are still alive as far as I know, he said. Somehow he sounded detached when he spoke about them. Stop right there, Raven swiftly interrupted. I forgot to tell you, but your 3rd eldest brother and 5th oldest brother are dead. Number 3 fell for a honey trap, and number 5 had his wine poisoned. That certainly seemed like a huge piece of information to forget. I stand corrected, Sirius cleared his throat. 2 of my brothers were assassinated. However, despite the magnitude of what he was saying, he didn't even twitch. The matter-of-fact way he announced it suggested that even though they were related by blood, Sirius had no feelings of love or attachment towards his brothers. Even so, Marylet's eyebrows knitted together in sorrow. I know you must be feeling terrible right now, but really, you just said that... Whatever. Stay strong, Sirius, she consoled him. I can't really remember their names, never mind their faces, but yes, it is a tragedy, I'm sure. I'll get over it one day, though. He replied with a fade, sad smile. He's bluffing, Raven clarified. Those 2 are honestly better off dead. All they did was embezzle the palace funds for their own selfish desires and debauchery. In fact, I bet there were a lot of people who jumped for joy when they found out they were dead, Raven spat. But, doesn't it scare you that Sirius might have been killed in the same way? Well, yeah. Although in his case, they tried to kill him because they were worried about what happened to them if he was still alive after all that happened. There are quite a few people that don't want him in power. Unknowingly, Raven had dropped a bombshell. Yeah. Yeah, he'd be in power. Hello, Prince. Marilette's eyes grew wide in a shock of realization. I knew he was one of the higher-ups, but when you say in power, do you mean, she hinted, an emperor? Of course, he's next in line to the throne. Duh! How did you not realize that? Raven shrugged. Sirius is going to be the emperor? She gasped. Yep, he overtook his brothers and is now the crown prince. So she went from being engaged to a crown prince to being dumped by the crown prince to being engaged to another crown prince. Girl! Her life is crazy. It was too much to process all at once. Her smile froze on her face. I had been sheltering royalty all this time. The prince in question suddenly stuck his face right in front of hers and peered into her eyes. What's wrong? He worried. Of course your face is just as lovely when clouded by unease, but I don't want you to feel that way. I'm just feeling a little shaken, she said in a hushed tone. I had no idea who you truly were. I told you it was a palace I escaped from. I thought you might get the picture from that. He pointed. Yes! Thank you! How did you not realize that? It did strike me as odd, but I didn't think you were actually... What, did you think he was a servant or something? She trailed off, still reeling. No wonder he wouldn't tell her where he came from when they first met. With this new information in her hands, Sirius's profession of love suddenly held a whole new weight to it. As she tried to shake the feeling that her life as she knew it was about to change completely, Raven finished giving his report to his familiars and turned back to Sirius. Lord Sirius, he addressed him. His Majesty has arranged for some troops to escort you back home. He has sent 100 of his best hand-picked soldiers and asked that you wait 2 days for them to arrive. 100 soldiers? Marielette gasped. Did you tell him about Lady Marielette? Sirius asked, completely unfazed by the news. Yep. When I told him what happened, he was worried that Lord Sirius might have treated her cruelly, Raven added with a stifled laugh. I wouldn't do that, he complained. Never! Right, Lady Marielette? He hedged, looking over to see her gentle features set in hard, rigid lines. It was the first time he had ever seen her look so gloomy. The sound of her name dragged her out of her thoughts, but her expression remained grave as she spoke grimly. 100 people will be here, she croaked. How am I going to provide refreshments for 100 people? No, Sirius consoled her. So many revelations had been thrown at her all at once that she was starting to get strange ideas. You don't have to do that, I promise. No one's expecting anything from you. You just take some nice, big, deep breaths. I guess sense really does come with age, Raven muttered in amusement. Dear Lord Almighty! Wow, a lot popped up. A lot of information. Chapter 2. Solano, the Demon Kingdom. 2 days later, a horde of 100 soldiers wearing large, bulky armor would soon descend upon the quiet town. And if that wasn't alarming enough, every single one of them was a demonic sorcerer. Oh. Is everybody gonna panic? As things went, it was a pretty big deal. Even so, the townspeople went about their peaceful lives as usual because no one knew they were coming. I mean, how the heck will we tell them all? Raven shrugged. We can't just go out there and shout, Hey guys, just so you know, a swarm of elite soldiers is going to swing by to pick up the crown prince and this potential empress, can we? By potential empress, do you mean me? Duh! Who do you think he's talking about? Marielette asked, nervously concentrating on thinly slicing an apple. Who else? He sighed. Her gaze wandered over to where he stood next to her, chopping another apple. She didn't know what to say. Raven didn't elaborate either. He simply carried on chopping up more apples with dexterous hands. Unlike Marielette, who always had a kitchen knife at the ready to prepare food, he used a small thin knife. Apparently he had experience cooking the ingredients he managed to hunt down in the mountains or rivers while taking care of Sirius during the time as fugitives. You got quite a talent there, Marielette complimented him. I'd be killed if anyone found out I fed the prince something unsavory, you see, he chuckled awkwardly. That's why I trained to make sure I could handle the bare minimum at least. What did you two used to eat on your travels? She asked. She had been lucky enough to grow up in a stable environment and never know the struggles of foraging for raw materials in her immediate surroundings, simply to survive. Even when she had traveled to far-off lands to carry out her stately duties, a cook always accompanied her, along with plenty of prepared ingredients. She wasn't sure why they insisted on sending one, though. Perhaps they were worried she would get poisoned if she ate any food prepared by strangers. When she'd visited wastelands without any farm villages in the vicinity, the palace had gone to great lengths to assure she had good food to eat. Marielette's powers only stretched as far as making plants grow. If she was ever poisoned, there was nothing she could do. No plant could cure her within minutes. The soldiers that came with her for protection would sometimes eat the strange-looking foreign fruits and berries they came across, but they didn't allow Marilet herself to eat any. That was why she was jealous of Sirius and Raven, and in a certain respect, of course. She knew they'd been through a lot, and it probably wasn't much fun, but she would have loved a little more adventure in her life. I'm not sure you want to know, Raven answered with a grimace. Oh no, I'm sorry. It must have been a horrible time for you. Don't answer if it makes you uncomfortable, she quickly backtracked. I'm not saying it because I don't want to, he clarified. I just thought it might make you feel sick. I think I could take it, so tell me. Grilled caterpillars with salt. Raven gritted his teeth as he said it, concentrating very hard on the next slices of apple in front of him. The hairy ones won't work, but if you get a smooth, slimy one, then you can cover it with salt and skewer it. Then you just cook them. What do they taste like? Marilet popped up, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. Raven flinched before continuing. Evidently, he hadn't been expecting her to take an interest. Well, if you don't know they're bugs, then that taste isn't all that bad, but are you sure you really want to know all this? Huh? Why not? In my experience, a lot of women are scared of bugs. I don't think there's any reason to be scared of them, she snorted firmly. Bugs are a sign that nature's thriving. There was a little truth in Raven's words, though. When she was younger, Marilet was so scared of insects that she would run a mile if she even saw one. However, at some point, she'd become immune to their presence. Although there were some bugs that preferred to nest in unsanitary conditions, in most cases they were found in large numbers in healthy green habitats. The more she came across various creepy crawlies in her daily work, her feelings of disgust towards them gradually waned. My mom even screams at butterflies, though, Raven tacked on. I could never, Marilet laughed. They're so beautiful when they fly. I particularly like the ones with the pale yellow and white wings. I think they're adorable. Oh, I know those, he nodded. They're common in spring, aren't they? That's right, when I see them I start to feel like spring is truly on its way. She always marveled at the way their softly colored wings shone as they danced throughout the springtime sky. Raven nodded enthusiastically in agreement. They turned around with Sirius and suddenly appeared in the kitchen, having emerged from his room. He'd just been talking to the Emperor through Raven's crows, but he had a strangely pleased look on his face. Lady Marilet, did you call for me? He asked. No, I didn't. How come? She blinked. Sirius' smile immediately fell and was replaced by a puzzled frown. I heard you saying beautiful and adorable, so I just assumed you were talking about me, he pouted. So that's why he was looking so cheerful. I'm sorry, Sirius, but we were only talking about butterflies, she smiled apologetically. Butterflies, huh? He echoed, pursing his lips in thought. Ah, I just remembered how Raven used to fry them with oil, and yep, no, Lord Sirius, would you like some of this delicious apple? Raven swiftly interrupted him, stuffing a slice of apple right between his lips. Raven, what was that for? Marilet asked, startled by his sudden insistence. It's nothing, Raven said with a grin before turning back to Sirius. That's it. Eat it all up. They were planning to make dried fruit with all the apples they'd sliced. Since both Sirius and Raven had lauded the apples Marilet grew, the Emperor requested a sample of them as well, with a special request. Will His Majesty really be satisfied with these? With this, she wondered, I don't think dried apples are anything fancy. You might think so, but that's just because dried fruit is common in this country. In the Demon Kingdom, all the fruit is extraordinarily sour. When you dry them, that sourness gets amplified, so generally people only eat them covered in sugar or honey while still fresh. Sirius explained calmly, trying to pry the small knife away from Raven as he spoke. Raven scowled, suspicious. Sorry for leaving you to help Lady Marilet alone, but I'm here now, so you can take a step back, Sirius gestured to him. No, I couldn't make you work, my lord, he shook his head. Especially if I'm just lazing around behind you, it'd be discourteous. Just sit down already. They are fighting over the freaking knife to help her. Sirius wanted to stay close to Marilet and help her work. That much was obvious, and Raven didn't have it in him to argue with someone with such stubborn character. Raven flopped down on the sofa in the living room, and after a few minutes his breathing became rhythmic and relaxed. In all honesty, he was still exhausted from his long journey, and he was secretly grateful to Sirius for his suggestion. Hang on. Let me just make sure that... Okay. Sirius and Raven were the only demons Marilet had ever seen, as far as she knew. If they hadn't personally told her about their race, she never would have known it from their extremely human appearance. While Sirius had horns, he could magic them away at will, and Raven's body didn't seem to differ from a human's in any way. That was why she assumed that all demons had a human-like appearance. However, she soon found out that she was very, very wrong. I thought so. Ah, you must be Lady Marilet, the saint who came to the aid of His Highness. What an honor to finally meet you in person. It would be an understatement to say the townspeople were absolutely terrified of the flock of demonic soldiers crowding the streets, of course. The demons had a range of appearances. They held the faces of animals such as goats, wolves, and boars, and their bodies were stacked with unbelievable masses of hard, bulky muscle. And throngs of them were standing in the middle of a small, quiet town. The demons have finally come to invade us, people screamed, running into their houses and watching in terror through their windows. Although if that was true, hiding away in their houses would have been futile. Luckily, these demons had no desire to invade. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name's Marilet Hardy. She greeted in return. We were expecting you. Hiya, Raven waved, clutching a burlap sack full of supplies. It's been so long. Sir Raven, a soldier bowed. You were reported to have been killed by the rebellion back at home. When we heard that you were safe and well with His Highness, it was like a dream. Seriously? Raven's jaw dropped. But I was giving regular reports to His Majesty. The soldiers stared fixedly at Raven with emotional smiles on their faces. Some of them even had tears in their eyes. Hey, stop that, Raven snapped. You're embarrassing me. His tone of voice was sharp, but somehow he didn't actually seem all too bothered by the attention. Despite their difference in appearance, the way the demons were smiling and blushing together was no different from how humans would react in the same situation. Marilet was simply watching on in silence so as not to deter from the heartfelt moment, but she did notice that several of the soldiers were staring at her. Is something the matter? She asked them directly. No, it's nothing, one soldier with the boars had answered. Despite their lack of expression, she could tell they were panicking. I humbly apologize if it made you feel uncomfortable in any capacity. The soldiers surrounding them nodded in agreement and swiftly dropped to their knees. Marilet flinched a little in shock. Please, he said, flustered. You haven't done anything to defend me, so there's no need for all that. But, oh, don't worry, guys, Raven chipped in. Lady Marilet is pretty different from the other saints we know. She won't threaten to turn you into ashes just because you stared at her. Something about what he just said didn't sit right with Marilet. Why would I... She trailed off confused. A strange smile flashed over Raven's face as he opened his mouth to explain, but... In our homeland, saints are revered beings, Sirius suddenly supplied, appearing at Marilet's side. They are to be treated with the same respect as the imperial family. Ah, okay. Today he left his deep scarlet horns on full display. The sunlight made them shine and gleam so brilliantly they almost looked like rubies. When they noticed him appear, the horde of soldiers dropped to their knees in unison. One wolf-like soldier at the front spoke on behalf of them all. Prince Sirius, he addressed him. Thank goodness you're safe. Raise your head. I'm not worthy. I left our land and abandoned my duties for such a long time. Don't say that, your highness. The wolf soldier shook his head. We have all eagerly awaited your return, soldiers and common people alike. There was a certain warmth to his subdued tone. He'd probably missed Sirius just as much as Raven had. Or perhaps even more so. Marilet peered deeply into Sirius's face as he averted his gaze, an embarrassed flush tinting his cheeks. You can do this, Marilet assured him. The whole country's counting on you. I know, I'm just not used to this anymore. I'm sure you'll get right back into the swing of things. Sirius, she cut herself off. Oh, sorry, I just realized I keep calling you by your name so casually, can't I? She hadn't really thought about it since finding out his true identity, and neither had Raven nor Sirius himself asked her to stop. However, it would be ridiculous to talk to a prince the same way she would talk to a friend. Straightening her back and giving Sirius a serious look, she bowed her head. Please forgive my discourtesy, your highness. The moment she said it, she heard a faint gasp from Raven. Huh? Uh-oh. I think that was the wrong move there. Slowly, she raised her head to peek up at Sirius. His mouth was set in a cold, hard line, and his fixed jade green eyes seemed to lose their shine. He was completely frozen. I don't think he's angry, but he doesn't look pleased either. Your Highness? She fretted. What's wrong? Your Highness? And no matter how much she called out to him, he remained silent. She waved a hand in front of his face, but he remained deadly still, completely unresponsive. Your Highness! She called it again several times, and finally Sirius broke out of his trance-like state. Could you please stop calling me that? He pleaded. Oh, my, forgive me. Do you have a special title? Marilet asked with a look of realization. No, I want you to call me by my name. Like you always do, he clarified. I couldn't possibly do that. You're a prince. She reiterated. I understand, but... Sirius wavered with a pained look on his face. Your Highness is far too much. Couldn't you make it Lord Sirius at most? Don't even think of calling me Prince Sirius either. He looked so desperately sad that Marilet began to regret not asking him directly before she said anything. It seemed like he wasn't fond of the people he was close to calling him by such a detached title. And now that she thought about it, while his soldiers called him Your Highness, Raven had always called him Lord Sirius, even though he was also of a lower standing than him. Okay, she nodded. From now on, I'll call you Lord Sirius. All right. Thank you, Lady Marilette. On the note, you don't need to call me lady or anything like that, she added. It'd been bugging her for a while, but it felt strange for royalty to be addressing her with such respect. I'm really looking forward to showing you my homeland, Lady Marilette, he beamed, completely ignoring her complaint. Evidently, he has no intention of changing that habit. Yeah. No one will think anything of it, so don't worry, Raven consoled her in a murmur. Remember what Lord Sirius said. To our people, saints are treated like royalty. Oh, that's true, she agreed. So much so that you could call him anything you liked, he added in a whisper, low enough that she wouldn't hear. He then walked over to a goat-like soldier nearby and thrust the sack he was carrying into their arms. This thing is super heavy. Could you mind taking it? Thanks, he smiled. Sir Raven, could I ask what's in here? They questioned, eyeing the heavy sack in their arms dubiously. It's full of apples that Marilette grew with her powers. They were all just about ripe, and it felt like a waste to just leave them behind, so we harvested them all for you guys to snack on during our journey home, he announced proudly. The soldier on the other hand froze in place just as Sirius had a few moments ago. What's wrong? Raven asked with a prod. How could you just throw something so precious at me? What if I dropped it? The soldier answered, their tone hysteric. Fruit grown by a saint's holy hand, my goodness! The goat-headed soldier was on the verge of tears, as well as several soldiers around them. They exclaimed aghast as news of the holy fruit gradually traveled further through the crowd. Oh dear, Marilette remarked sordidly, watching as pandemonium erupted before her eyes. That was when she clapped her hands to her cheeks and gasped. She had an idea. In that case, how about I just grow some more? What do you mean, Maynard? What do you mean, Marilette? Raven asked, tilting his head to one side. Well, if these apples are thought to be precious, she hummed, I can carry on making them until there's so many they lose their value. Sure is some logic, Raven quipped, with a half-hearted laugh. Marilette didn't seem to understand that the low number wasn't what gave these apples their worth. The goat-like soldier's eyelashes were still wet, their tears heavy with newfound responsibility. As they carefully clutched the sack to their chest, Sirius made sure to pat the soldier and assure him none of that was your fault. Solano, also known as the Demonic Empire, was situated on the northernmost tip of the continent. Many knew that over 80% of the population was made up of demons, but other than that fact, the land was shrouded in mystery. The Solanic government discontinued all diplomatic relations with neighboring countries several hundred years ago, and the demon race had command of both magic and physical prowess, far surpassing any human. Then the rumor that they were planning to take over the entire continent had been floating around for a long time. A few countries had attempted to send in spies to collect information, but those missions eventually ended in failure. Apparently, any spies who attempted to infiltrate the Empire never stepped foot in their home country ever again. We did almost conquer the continent, so I suppose you can't blame them for thinking that, Sirius joked. Oh my, really? Marilette blinked. The two of them were making casual conversation among the gentle sway of the carriage on their way to Solano. On Sirius's other side, Raven had his face glued to the window, watching the vast scenery pass them by. There were several other carriages filled with soldiers running alongside, surrounding them. Isn't this all a bit much? She couldn't help but think it was unnecessary, but also she then remembered experiencing similar treatment when she headed to distant lands for work. Around 200 years ago, the emperor at the time was after a large number of slaves. So he decided to invade countries with large human populations. Why would he do that? She gasped. Slavery doesn't exist in Solano. As such, he thought it would be a good idea to go to war and make the enemy soldiers they imprisoned his slaves. Apparently, he only wanted them so he could build a new palace structure faster. How idiotic. He sighed. Couldn't he have just waited for the building work to be finished at the usual rate, she asked, in embarrassment echoing Sirius's sigh. Evidently, some of the country's old emperors were of a troublesome character. Sirius frowned in discomfort, seemingly ashamed of his country's dark past. There's a saying in Solano, those with strength must not become drunk on power. They were the words of the country's founder. He recalled, as far as demons are concerned, humans are weak, feeble beings. Their lifespan is short, and they can't even use magic. That's why it's considered taboo among demons to even try to overpower them. And if anyone commits that taboo, well, let's just say it's not pretty. Really, what happens to them? Marilette asked, encouraging him to continue. Knowing how much you value peace and quiet, I thought you wouldn't want to talk about this, but... A fond smile tugged at his lips. You're surprisingly curious. I'm surprised, but that just makes you all the more attractive. Oh, don't get me wrong, I don't like hearing about those things, but I just have to know the whole story, she laughed, her usual smile bright on her face. Alright then, he nodded. I suppose you did spend 5 whole years in that disgusting palace. You must have built up a resistance to this sort of talk. Exactly, I've heard people talk about war and politics many times, including things that I'm sure I can't talk about in public. As part of her education as the crown princess, she'd studied the history of the land. Among the affairs she'd studied, there was no shortage of tales that would make anyone's hair stand on end. As she reminisced about her days in the palace, Raven gave her a curious look. Sorry, but I was told never to utter a word of it to anyone, so I can't tell you, she reiterated. No, that's not what I was thinking about. I don't even want to know, Raven assured her, shaking his head. It's just I was taken aback by how lax your country is about their security. I thought the same thing, Sirius said in a subdued murmur. They just let you go unchecked after telling you confidential information about the state? Are they even sane? What if you sold that information to another country? Or did they really not think about that? Raven added. That's a good point, actually, Marylet agreed. His Highness never said anything about it. They haven't come after me so far, but will I be okay? It had been over half a year since she left, though. If they had a problem with her living freely, surely they would have hunted her down by now. That idiot prince, Raven mumbled, taking another look out the window. Oh, we're just entering the outskirts of Solano. His tone brightened significantly. You gotta look outside, Marylet. You're gonna like this. She leaned forward to stick her head out the window alongside Raven and took a look around. There was nothing but a neglected, wild-looking road without a building in sight. She had no idea what he was referring to. Then it happened. The whole area began to blur and warp as though she was looking at it through a pool of water. The landscape swayed and refracted until eventually it morphed into something entirely different. That day, the sky was the same pale blue as Marylet's eyes. However, within those few seconds, it was suddenly dyed a dark, shadowy black, while the ground was now littered with flecks of light. Wow, she gasped in amazement. Why is it night all of a sudden? In the Demon Kingdom, it's always night. Our sky isn't blue like yours, Sirius said. With a snap of his fingers, several orbs of light appeared above their heads. Thanks to that, the carriage was illuminated once more. This is the reason why those spies could never infiltrate Solano, he continued. To protect us from invasion, the country's borders are hidden by a disguise. No one can enter uninvited. But what about the spies who never returned to their home countries? Marylet wondered. That's no more than a myth, concocted by humans to instill the idea that demons are a cruel race. Long ago, it didn't used to be like this. We had soldiers placed around the borders to drive away intruders just like any other country. But with the development of mystical barriers, we didn't have to worry anymore. There are still a few soldiers stationed at the borders just in case, though, Raven said, poking at the globes of light hanging in the air. So that means no one has to get hurt. I think. It's a wonderful invention, Marylet beamed. You think so, Lady Marylet? Sirius grinned. Celestine will be pleased. Is that who invented them? Yes, he's a little bizarre, but he's a very competent architect of magical devices. He sounds like a wonderful person. I'd love to meet him, she suggested eagerly. Very well. It's been a while since I've seen him, too. Let's pay him a visit, Sirius bellowed happily. Meanwhile, Raven gave a wry smile as they listened to their conversation. A little bizarre is definitely putting it mildly. Hang on. Let me check and see how far I've gotten. I'll read a little longer. Apparently, news of Sirius's return had spread to the entire country as soon as the carriage passed into the imperial capital. Throngs of demons crowded the streets to welcome their prince back. Prince Sirius has returned! Everyone get the flowers ready! Wow, your highness, you've grown so much! Hey, don't go pointing your fingers at the carriage. Oh my, his highness is so handsome. Even though it was nighttime, the capital was very much alive. Everywhere Marylet looked, the air was filled with the same glowing orbs Sirius had cast earlier. Men stood on the roofs of their surrounding houses and emptied bucketfuls of flower petals over the carriage as it approached, vivid colors dancing through the air. Suddenly, a thunderous roar sounded from overhead, and Marylet poked her head out the window to look up. She saw the starless night sky glittering with multicolored fireworks. They were popular back at home, but she'd never seen them on this scale before. Reds, blues, greens, yellows, purples, whites, a shimmering spectrum of colors shot into the sky before bursting into the largest explosion of light she'd ever seen. And still, the people's cheers were loud enough to drown out the noise. It's just like a festival, she marveled. Well, it is one, Raven pointed out. They're celebrating the prince's return and the fact that the rebellion didn't manage to kill him. Even though I asked His Majesty for a modest welcome, Sirius sighed, apparently the actual object of all the festivities wasn't all too enthralled. He stared down at his feet, his body stiff and rigid. When they all go out like this, I don't know how to react. Raven interjected, clearing his throat. It sounds like you're not the only one they're celebrating. Cheers resounded from outside the carriage, but a large number of them were dedicated to Marilet, not Sirius. Welcome, Saint. We heard you sage Prince Sirius. I wonder if that beautiful woman is Saint Marilet. She looks so elegant. Look, Mommy, Saint Marilet just smiled at me. Or smiled at us. Many people, both young and old, were excitedly discussing her visit to the kingdom. Marilet had never experienced anything like this before. She could do little but stare in wonder at the dazzling scene before her eyes. That was partly because she'd never been in front of such a large crowd of people before, though. As the carriage slowly rolled through the streets, a huge castle eventually emerged in the distance up ahead. At first it was difficult to even see, but if Marilet strained her eyes, she could just about make out the outline of all the buildings. Wow, it's painted totally black. Indeed, Sirius nodded. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it really is dark, isn't it? The light of the fireworks illuminated the facade of the castle, making it barely visible in contrast to the equally shadowy skyline. The palace was built to commemorate the founding of the kingdom, but it said it was designed that way so that it's camouflaged from enemy view. Oh, that's a clever idea. I just assumed that the design's favorite color was black, she laughed. If they built it purely on their own taste, I'm sure the level of criticism will be staggering. Sirius chuckled alongside her before taking a furtive glance at the window and lowering his voice. By the way, I have a favor to ask before we exit the carriage. Marilet stared at him with curious eyes waiting. Try not to get separated from us, no matter what. I understand if I get lost in a completely new country, it'd be quite the ordeal. That's not what I mean. He murmured in reply, but since she already agreed to stick with him, it didn't bother explaining what he did mean. Raven, on the other hand, glanced outside the window with a frown on his face, apparently understanding the gravity of Sirius's request. With the once peaceful atmosphere inside the carriage growing ever so slightly frostier, they finally pulled up outside the main gates of the palace. The road leading up to the palace doors was lined with soldiers wearing large, heavy armor. Trying to brighten the solemn atmosphere, Raven leaped to his feet. Yeah, thanks and all that, he muttered jokingly before climbing out the carriage door. Sirius soon followed him, then turned around and held a helping hand out to Marilet. Here, Lady Marilet, please hold on to me as you climb down. Are you sure that's all right? Oh, boy. Of course. I've dreamt about this scenario for a long time, he insisted with a huge grin, and Marilet couldn't possibly find it in her to refuse. She slipped her hand into his, and as soon as she nimbly jumped down, he wrapped his arms around her to steady her. Then, in that same moment, a deafening roar erupted right behind her. Oh no, the carriage, she gasped. The carriage that the three of them had been occupying mere seconds ago had been blown to smithereens. The debris was whipped up into a pillar of fire, but strangely enough, none of the sparks or splinter of wood reached her skin. That was when she noticed a thin scarlet membrane encasing both her and Sirius, protecting them. Somehow he must have quickly cast some sort of protective magic within these few vital seconds. Lady Marilet, are you hurt? He asked, his tone heavy with concern. I'm all right, but what about the horses? She worried, nibbling her bottom lip. Rest assured, they seem to have teleported to a safe place. Oh, thank goodness, she sighed with relief. Marilet, Raven called out, a shaky laugh to his voice. Aren't you a little too calm for someone who almost got blown up? She had no chance to reply before a storm of colossal sharp icicles came raining down from the sky, aimed towards Raven. Raven, duck! Sirius barked. What? Okay. He panicked, quickly doing as Sirius said. Once he crouched down, a huge wall of fire spread over the top of his head, intercepting the icicles. They burst into steam the moment they touched the fiery shield, and immediately evaporated. There wasn't even a single drop of water left behind. Unfortunately, the leaks of flames also scorched the top of Raven's hair. Yes, that's hot, he gulped. Oh, don't make such a fuss. It'll grow back. Sirius rolled his eyes. What do you mean, grow back? How much have I lost? He cried, fiercely patting at the top of his head to find out in reality only a little had burned off, and he was in no danger of exposing any bald patches. Thank you so much for saving us, Lord Sirius, Marilet smiled fondly. Well, I'm the cause of it, after all. What sort of a demon would I be if I just left you to take the hit? He uttered sincerely. Raven's lucky I didn't, though, he tacked on a murmur. You can let me go now, I'm all right, she assured him. A strangely long silence fell as a look of deep thought crossed Sirius's face. There might be more attacks, so let's stay like this a little longer. He eventually concluded. Marilet could feel his heartbeat racing and heard his breathing grow a little ragged. Perhaps he was feeling shaken from the sudden catastrophe. As always, your magic is something to behold, Sirius, and my have you grown. An unfamiliar voice rang out, their manner of speech old-fashioned and gentle. Marilet turned to see a man standing atop the ash-covered splinters of the wreckage, smiling kindly. Judging by his appearance, he must have been around her age. He had pale blonde hair with a shine like... By his appearance. Girl, you haven't... You can't judge by appearances in this. And blue eyes reminiscent of the bottom of a tranquil lake. Then on top of it all, his head was adorned with golden sparkling horns. I wanted to ascertain whether you were out of practice. I slipped out of the palace unnoticed, you see. Even so, I don't think that's any excuse to go to such lengths just to test me. You almost hurt Lady Marilette, Sirius objected in disgust, pulling her even closer. However, everyone else was already on their knees, bowing their heads to the mystery man. Oh, Marilette gasped in disbelief. Are you the emperor of this land? He is definitely not around your age, girl. Why, of course. Do you want a prize for your powers of deduction? Yeah. I think he's, Sirius's father, so he's probably at least over 100, if not older. Want some how about some candy? Or, no, never mind. Let us begin with introductions, he announced, cutting himself off. My name is Uranometria Solano. I am the one who bears the distinguished title of Emperor in this land. The Demon Emperor said, giving the two of them a relaxed wave. Okay, I think I'm going to have to end this one. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this part, and I'll see you guys next time.